Now, every game has at least one character that, for whatever reason, captures an audience's heart and becomes their absolute favourite. However, just because a character manages to become a fan favourite doesn't mean they get to stay like this forever, because sometimes when a studio releases a sequel, it makes severe changes to their game and it might end up affecting your favourite character in a very unfavourable way. And that's what we're here to talk about today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 beloved video game characters you hated in the sequel. Number 10. Anders, Dragon Age 2. Now, Anders is possibly one of the most controversial and inventive figures in the Dragon Age series. When you first meet him in the Dragon Age Origins DLC Awakening, he's just a funny, wisecracking mage who wants to enjoy a life of freedom. But when you meet him in Dragon Age 2, Anders becomes a bitter renegade who tricks you into helping him blow up a temple full of innocent worshippers. The climax of Dragon Age 2 is easily the most intense moment in the entire game, and most of it is due to Anders' treachery. It's so unexpected, and its results are so grave that you can't help but want to strangle the guy for setting it up behind your back. The mage puts the blood of the hundreds of people blown up here on your hands, and then forces you to involve yourself in an all-out war between the mages and the Templars, just because you were naive enough to trust him. Suffice to say, Anders' stunt at the end of Dragon Age 2 cost him a lot of fans. His reputation crumbled into pieces almost just as quickly as the church he so nonchalantly exploded. Number 9. The Outsider, Dishonored 2. A really good monster is one that you can't fully wrap your head around. A lack of understanding is the perfect way to instill a sense of unease and morbid curiosity in your audience, and this is what the Outsider was to many players when they were first introduced in the original Dishonored. And this is exactly what Dishonored 2 took away. The Outsider is a mysterious entity within the Dishonored universe that grants dark powers to people like Corvo and Emily. His appearance in the original was one of the most enticing parts of the lore. He was both mysterious and an ambiguous character, which made you question why he gave you his powers and what they could do to the world. This all changed when Dishonored 2 decided to expand upon the Outsider's lore and make him more human. The game transformed him from a heretical dark god to a human sacrifice turned supernatural entity. And to make things worse, Arcane even released a full game dedicated to killing the Outsider, revealing everything about his past and fully depriving him of all of that slick, mysterious appeal. Please, I'm not asking for much, just try and keep your demigods mysterious and cool. Number 8. Chuck Greene, Dead Rising 2, Off the Record. Dead Rising 2's protagonist, Chuck Greene, is pretty different from all of the others. Since he's nowhere near as comical as Frank West or even Nick, he's much more of a serious person, which actually makes sense considering his tragic backstory and the fact that he needs to constantly look out for his infected daughter. His lack of humour might seem like a detriment to his character, but in reality, it actually made him much more sympathetic. A lot of people who played the second game loved Chuck for his relationship with his daughter and rooted for him as he tried to save her from turning into a zombie. And this is why the vision of Chuck in Dead Rising 2's spin-off Off the Record is such a disappointment to fans. Here the game reimagines Chuck by turning him into a paranoid psychopath after he's unable to save Katie. He carries around a doll resembling his daughter and attacks anyone who comes close to her. If this already doesn't sound disappointingly sad, Frank, who replaces Chuck as the protagonist in Off the Record, treats Chuck just like another crazy person when he kills him. It is a brutal portrayal of his character, but thankfully, Off the Record is not canonical. Number 7. Lucy Stillman, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Now let's be honest, nobody really enjoyed doing the Desmond missions in the first few Assassin's Creed games. However, there was one noteworthy thing about them, and that was the developing relationship between Desmond and Lucy, a relationship that was completely destroyed along with Lucy's character in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Lucy Stillman is a member of the Assassin Order who helps Desmond access his genetic memories and locate the ancient artifacts known as the Pieces of Eden. She's a very compassionate person who cares about Desmond, and this eventually sparks a romance between the two. Everything up until Brotherhood suggests that Lucy is a trusted ally of Desmond and somebody that he can rely upon. But then, because Ubisoft was unwilling to pay Lucy's voice actress Kristen Bell royalties going forward, causing her to quit, the writers were forced to find a quick solution to remove her from the game, and they decided to absolutely murder her character's integrity. AC Brotherhood reveals that Lucy Stillman is secretly a Templar and that she was only using Desmond to get the Pieces of Eden. The revelation had no setup whatsoever, and it ends her relationship with Desmond in a really unsatisfying and inconclusive way. Number 6. Cortana, Halo. Now, Cortana is as famous as the Halo series itself. Her main appeal lies in her charming and lifelike personality, which is perfectly juxtaposed with her incorporeal, artificial nature. Cortana always finds a way to show her human side during her conversations with Master Chief, which brings out the humanity in her heavy-duty companion as well. But unfortunately, later incarnations of Cortana don't really like to show much empathy. You see, in Halo 4, the funny and compassionate Cortana gets infected with a virus that turns it into a maniacal and rampant AI. The corrupted Cortana becomes a force of evil that seeks to dominate the galaxy, and all of her previous traits that made her a fan favourite become a distant and heartbreaking past. The writers tried to redeem her character by justifying her actions and even giving her the cliché moment of sacrifice, but this not only didn't bring back the old Cortana, it undermined the new Cortana's potential for being an immediate force of evil. As they say, you either die a hero or get rewritten across enough games to become a mediocre villain. Number 5. Johnny, Grand Theft Auto 5. Johnny's transformation from GTA 4 to GTA 5 is so tragic you could almost feel sorry for the guy if it weren't for the fact that he did it all to himself. You see, Johnny went from being a fearsome leader of a motorcycle club to a hopeless and stompable drug addict, going against everything that he fought for in his original appearance. Though The Lost and the Damned wasn't the favourite of GTA 4's 2 DLCs, it had quite a few fans due to its protagonist Johnny. His no-nonsense attitude combined with his absolute loyalty to his companions made him an easy character to cheer for. However, those traits also made him an easy target for manipulation by his drug-addicted girlfriend Ashley. Towards the end of The Lost and the Damned, Johnny shows growth by cutting Ashley from his life and not letting her self-destructive behaviour bring him down as well. It made for a great moment that was ruined when GTA 5 came out and revealed that Johnny got back together with Ashley, even becoming a heroin addict himself. His downfall is so disappointing and unfortunately hypocritical as well. Number 4. Kenny, The Walking Dead Season 2. Whenever old characters come back for the sequel, it's usually met with approval from fans, and this is exactly what happened when Kenny returned to Telltale's Walking Dead in Season 2, but let's just say the love didn't last forever. Kenny's appeal lies in his loyalty and reliability. In Season 1, he was the most useful member of Lee's group, and even though he would be very passionate when you disagreed with him, you were always able to count on him when things were bad. In Season 2, however, Kenny was still a reliable guy, but due to the trauma of losing his family, he became unstable and easy to provoke into making irrational decisions. Most interactions with Kenny were mentally exhausting, as the man refused to care about anyone who wasn't him or Clementine. The culmination of this was the final act, where Kenny attacked Jane for not agreeing with him and forced Clem to choose between shooting him or letting Jane die. Though the player's decisions here was pretty evenly split, the number of people who chose to shoot Kenny is ultimately greater. The statistics give a pretty clear idea of how people's perception of Kenny had changed in Season 2. Number 3. Ellie, The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Part 2 tells an intricate story of revenge that completely transforms the characters that players had grown to love in the original. In particular, it takes Ellie down a dark path that stirred quite the controversy amongst the Last of Us fanbase. The original Ellie from Part 1 is easily the best part of the game. She has an inquisitive but sarcastic personality that works really well when paired with Joel's jaded cynicism. You can't help but feel protective of her, and that's probably why most players don't really judge Joel that much for what he does in the game's finale. But that being said, when Ellie does wrong by Joel in the sequel, defending her actions becomes a little bit more difficult. Her desire to get revenge for Joel's death drives her to become an incredibly callous and brutal person, to the point where her revenge has little to do with the lives that she has ruined. Ellie's drastic transformation is obviously a deliberate choice by the game's writers, but that said, there were plenty of fans who hated this overall direction, and who could blame them when young Ellie was such a joyful character. Number 2. Jill Valentine, Resident Evil 5. Now, Jill Valentine is an iconic part of the Resident Evil franchise. She's been a part of the STARS team since Resident Evil 1, and her transformation from rookie officer to co-founder of a global anti-terrorist agency is fascinating to watch. But unfortunately, Jill's development stops in Resident Evil 5, a game that reduces her to a mere side character. Now, there are plenty of things that went wrong with Resident Evil 5, but perhaps the most damning part of it all is what they did to Jill Valentine. This badass special agent gets captured by Albert Wesker, who brainwashes her and turns her into a mutated super soldier. Now, it doesn't necessarily sound like a terrible plotline, but the way in which it's handled is very sloppy. It made Jill into a silent and obedient soldier with no personality whatsoever, and it's really disappointing and predictable, right down to her rather underwhelming reveal. However, the worst part of Jill's change from Resident Evil 5 is that her mutation made her an inconvenient character for Resident Evil's horror setting, and it's why she never appears in any of the new games. And number 1, John Marston, Red Dead Redemption 2. One of the greatest paradoxes of the Red Dead Redemption series is that, despite everyone loving John Marston in the original, no one ever really wanted to play as him in the sequel. And the reason is the same as why people hated to play as John's son Jack. We simply spent too much time in the shoes of his predecessor. When John Marston, spoiler alert, was brutally executed in the final act of the first game, everybody mourned his death. Since the player spent the entire game following John as we were trying to reunite with his family, having the man be taken away altogether was the worst thing imaginable. After the epilogue, most players were salty about having to play as Jack instead of John. However, when Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, history repeated itself and John became the new reject. Though people weren't sure about the new protagonist at first, Arthur Morgan became one of the most beloved characters in video game history. So when he eventually died his own tragic death and John took the reins, getting stuck with the old favourite gave people a not-so-sweet taste of irony. Rockstar really does have a sick sense of humour, it seems. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 beloved video game characters you hated in the sequel. I hope you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules, and you can go follow me over on Threads and Instagram, where I'm at RetroJ, but the O is a 0. Hope to see you over there. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.